Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Lunch and Learn session from CILIP's Health Libraries Group. Today, we're going to be talking about professional registration, and we're joined by an excellent panel from CILIP, some PRSOs, and some people already doing their chartership, and people who have revalidated as well. So hopefully we've got that full spectrum of experience to answer all your different questions that we have about professional registration. We'll be recording today's session and it will appear on our YouTube channel, so please bear that in mind. Just ask you to mute yourself whilst the presentations are going on at the beginning, after which we'll move to a panel discussion, and please feel free at that point to raise your hand, ask any questions, and if we've got any questions as you go along, then again, please feel free to put those in the chat and we'll try and get to those at the appropriate point at the panel discussion. So without further ado, I'll hand over to my colleague Claire, who's going to introduce today's session for us.
Thank you, Paul. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my slides. Just to double check, everybody can see those okay? Great, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Claire Labatz. I am the Professional Services Development Manager at CILIP, and I look after professional registration and also apprenticeships and accreditation too. This session today is a general introduction into professional registration. So apologies if I am covering some things that you already know, but for context, it provides the basis for everything I'm going to say in regards to professional registration. So I'm sure you already know that CILIP is a chartered body, but did you know that the Royal Charter that we are bestowed with is a recognition of our preeminent, stability and permanence in presenting the profession, representing the profession, and we've also, as part of this award, been awarded the right to award individual professional registration. So that's the different levels that we'll talk through shortly, and it includes chartership. Why is it important? Well, individual charter status imparts parity with other chartered professions. The UK Privy Council's policy is that the criteria for individual chartered status should be broadly similar across the professions. So, for example, regardless of whether you're a chartered accountant, a chartered librarian, or a chartered electrical engineer, you're all working towards the same standard in terms of professionalisation. The UK is the world leader in professional standards and chartered institutes, and having UK chartered status in a given profession is advantageous at a global level. People might not recognise your job title, they might not quite understand what you do, but if you tell them that you're chartered, that has a common understanding as to what that is about and the value that it holds as well. So moving on. This slide is a little bit about the benefits of being a member of CILIP. You must be a member of CILIP to undergo professional registration. But in addition to following that professional registration path, there's a lot of support and benefits that are available to you. You know about the professional networks. And I would encourage you to look at both the regional networks and other special interest groups as well that might take you into a certain specialism that's of interest to you. It also helps widen your perspectives in terms of being able to meet criteria under the professional registration pathway, which we'll come on to in a bit more detail shortly. So within professional registration, we have a number of different levels. Now, there is clear progression between the levels, but each level stands alone. So this means that you might not hold the level below, but that shouldn't stop you from going for the level that's most appropriate to you. So, for example, if you feel like you have the right experience and background and can demonstrate the criteria for fellowship, you don't necessarily have to have held chartership or certification before. But if you want to follow the progressive route, certification is for people just starting out. Chartership is for people who have started to build up a body of professional experience and have the ability to reflect on and recommend service improvements and are displaying leadership skills. Fellowship is for people who are making a significant contribution to the profession. So each have their own individual criteria, but overall, the criteria look a little bit like this. There are 3 criteria that you must meet. The first is around personal performance, and that is about being able to demonstrate continuing professional development, to understand where your skills are at a particular point in time, and how you have developed them to get to a particular place that you want to be. Organizational context is about being able to understand the value of your role, your work, how that fits not only within your department, but how it is contributing to the wider overall organizational goals as well. And the wider professional context is that piece about understanding what's going on outside of your area. The library and information world is a huge world, covers many different vectors, but there are often commonalities, challenges that you might be experiencing in your own sector that might also be common to what somebody else is experiencing in another sector. And it's being able to understand what's going on and how you can draw learning from that to bring it back into your own sector and your own role. So that's the criteria. This is what a submission looks like. So you have a description piece called an evaluative statement, which must describe how you meet the specifics for your level of criteria 1, 2, and 3. That evaluative statement must reference evidence. So you must provide with your submission a body of evidence to back up what you're saying in your evaluative statement. You are also required to complete a PKSB assessment. PKSB, for those of you that don't know, is the CILIP Professional Knowledge and Skills Base tool. It's an online tool that helps you evaluate your skills and track how you are developing those skills. So within your submission, you must provide a report on your skills and how those have developed. You're also required to include a CV and job description. And if you're applying for fellowship, you must also provide 3 supporting letters. So that's a little bit about what the submission looks like and what you would be required to pull together. Let's talk a little bit now. I want to delve a little bit more into the PKSB. It is a benefit that's available to all members, regardless of whether you choose to go through professional registration or not. It you can see from the outside rings, covers those 3 criteria: professional development, organisation context, and the wider context as well. And then you've got a number of sections that in the inner wheel that it's split down into. All the different professional expertise are on there, and generic skills as well. And right down in the centre, underpinning everything, are ethics and values. Now, in relation to a professional registration submission, you're asked to focus on not all of those sections. Choose 1, 2, or 3 sections, and then each section is divided into subsections or areas. And it is recommended for a professional registration submission that you choose 10 to 12 areas. So perhaps if you choose 3 sections, you might choose 4 areas within each section that you want to focus on and develop further. That's a little bit about the PKSB. What are the advantages of holding professional registration? Well, we have found from work-based surveys that we've done in the past that those holding chartered status are often earning more. The submission process that you must go through, that's evaluation and self-reflection, not only provides you with a CPD record, but it also provides you with a whole host of evidence and information that's really useful for when appraisals come round. And the same set of information can also be useful in job interviews too. It also provides you with the opportunity in our very time-poor environment to carve out a bit of time to be able to step back and reflect on your skills, where you are right now, where you'd like to be, and what skills you should focus on to get down that pathway to where you want to be. Now, we've got a whole host of resources and information available to support professional registration. There are some support materials available that are available to non-members, and that includes access to the professional registration handbooks that give you, they're a guide through what you need to do and how you should approach it. There are a number of open access webinar recordings that relate to professional registration, in particular supporting criteria 2 and 3. Supporting creating evidence and using the PKSB tool. For CILIP members, you have access to the PKSB tool. You also have access to the e-learning hub videos. So this is an expanded out section of supporting videos to support professional registration. You also have access to the PRSO-led webinars. PRSO are our professional registration support officers. They are the people that will help and support you through professional registration. They run a number of live webinars throughout the year to support you from getting started, to give you help on reflective writing, and even to help you carve out that time to help you with your submission with sessions entitled Shut Up and Write. There's also a dedicated group on the website that you have access to with a host of supporting resources and an opportunity to be able to ask questions and to connect with a PRSO to ask any questions that you might have on the professional registration process and the submission process. That's all I wanted to talk about in terms of a general introduction to professional registration. Hopefully that's giving you a bit of a flavour for what it's about, why it's of value, and the sorts of things that you need to do. I'd be happy to take any questions at the end, but right now I would like to introduce you to our panel. We have Sophie Castle, Victoria Robinson, Jill Young, and Victoria Treadway. First of all, I'm going to introduce you and hand over to Sophie. Sophie is a clinical librarian currently based in the Knowledge Library Service at Medway Maritime Hospital in Medway, Kent. She has previously worked in the academic, public and prison library sectors and has been in her current post for just over a year. Sophie has worked in library services for just over 20 years and has completed her degree in Information and Library Studies at Aberystwyth in 2009. And now I'm going to stop sharing, and pass you over to Sophie.
Thank you very much, and I'm going to start sharing. Right, hi everyone. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a kind of whistle-stop tour of how I've found chartership so far. So I did initially attempt it about 10 years ago. It was a slightly different structure back then, but I did find I wasn't in the right place for it. And I think I realised that I wasn't quite experienced enough. And I'm glad I started the process. But actually, I think now I am much more in a place and I have more experience to put towards it. So I started with the PKSB. What's really, really helpful is there is a health specific one, a health library specific one. So that really helped for me to hone it in for my sector. I knew I wanted a mentor, so that was something I had when I started it and attempted it 10 years ago, and they are just really, really helpful. I think for someone like me that's quite a procrastinator, I need someone just to discuss things with, to make sure I keep to time and things like that. And also I found it really useful that most of the training is online. So I would really recommend the getting started with professional registration, the chartership course. It is 3 hours, but it gives you a really good overview of what's expected of you. And also, I mean, I made copious notes as I attended because I wanted to make sure I'd got everything, and then I can just go back to it as and when, which has been really helpful. There's also, so criteria at 2 and 3, I personally think are the trickiest ones. And there are really, really good webinars on the CILIP website. So again, I've watched those back and I just remind myself just to kind of keep myself on track as well. So I did find the list online, but unfortunately, they didn't get back to me, the people that I contacted. So I was a little bit disheartened to start with, but I spoke to my manager and actually I was paired with a really fantastic mentor. So I've been very, very lucky. She's been amazing. So she's still in the NHS sector, but she's just been really good to bounce ideas off of. We've met on Teams, but also she has kept me to time just to make sure that actually, if I say I'm going to do something in a month, I actually do it. PKSB, I got a bit overexcited at first and I did have 15 areas. I soon found that was far too many and had to cut that down. It's a really useful tool, but I would say pick just certain bits of it. So you don't want to give yourself too many areas and too many segments to kind of start with, because it does get a bit overwhelming if you try and pick too many, which I found. And also I hadn't realised, so the comments box, so the sectors that you do pick, the comments box are fantastic for putting extra evidence. So I realised I could put part of my journey and what I'd done for that particular PKSB part, I could put it in the comments box. So it's about 100 words, but actually I found that really helpful as well. also think about the criteria. So is it 1, 2 or 3 that is actually linking to your PKSB? And I found that really helpful, just to put whether it was 1, 2 or 3, or if it was maybe 1 and 2, and you could put both of those within like the evidence box at the end in the comments box. One of the things I really should have done and was recommended to me, but I've kind of done it retrospectively, is I'd really recommend, even if it's on an Excel spreadsheet, put when you attended and just some initial thoughts and feelings. So I've gone back over some of my training notes, and actually I wish I'd just put things like I felt this was really useful because, or something like that, just so I could go back and revisit that side of it. So that is really what you want to put in your evaluative statement. So if you've got initial thoughts or just initial notes, it's really useful for when you're doing your write-up. As Claire mentioned, the shut up and write sessions are fantastic if you just want to carve some time out. So with me, I am a procrastinator, I will admit it. And I think some of it, I just needed to get on and write. So I was so busy in my head thinking, what should I write? How should I start? I just needed to get on with it and get something down. And I read a really good article that said that there was someone else who was doing chartership, and they said, I just have 20 minutes a day, 20 minutes, and I know that is chartership time. I will do some write-up. And actually, you can do quite a bit in 20 minutes. You'd be amazed. And I found just giving myself a little bit of time each day, even if it was just to label a bit of evidence, to go take pictures, it just gives you that little bit of time. Otherwise, you'll find months have passed and you might not have done anything towards it. And then you have to revisit it and think, oh, where was I? Whereas if you were just adding a bit each day, it really does make a difference. And again, I'm going to admit, reflexive writing was something I hadn't done before. So when I first started writing, it was too descriptive, and I was trying to do academic writing, which was no. So I was recommended the reflective journal. Found it fantastic. It gives you some really, really good so prompts, I'd say, but also things like structures you can use, like the 3 whys and things like that. I also used AI to just give me some sentence starters, because I think I just had to get in the frame of writing, starting things like I feel, I thought, what you would do differently. So I may have done this time, but next time. So I use that just to kind of get my language going and get my language right. So I'm whistle stops touring this a bit, but this is kind of my tips really, is record your training and initial thoughts, even if it's just a few quick notes. It's really handy because you can go back and look at that when you're doing your write-up. Really recommend having a mentor, although you don't have to. I personally find it really useful, even just if you've had this idea and you just want to kind of bounce it with somebody. It's so handy. The CILIP courses are fantastic, even if it's something outside of your sector. It's really good to be able to see what other sectors are doing, and fantastic for your other criteria, for your 2 and 3, and just get writing. So that's it from me. I will stop sharing now. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sophie. Our next member of the panel to speak is Vicky. Vicky works as the Deputy Librarian at UCL School of Pharmacy Library and has worked there since September 2003. She's a chartered librarian with over 20 years experience working in public and academic libraries, including King's College London and St George's University of London. Vicky is a CILIP mentor and is potentially thinking of registering for CILIP Fellowship in the future. She has a BA Honours in Library and Information Management from Thames Valley University and an MSc in Information and Library Management from the University of Central England. Pass you over to Vicky.
Thanks, Claire. I'm having technical problems, so Paul, if you're able to share my slides, that would be great. Please, thank you. So, hi everyone. As Claire gave an introduction, my name is Vicky and I work at the UCL School of Pharmacy Library. I started off my career in public libraries before and sort of left school and started work straight away. And from then on, I mean, when I was working in the public library, there were chartered librarians working alongside me. And I always wanted to further myself. And when one public librarian I spoke to at the time, before I was going to university to undertake my undergraduate degree, said to me, "Why do you want to charter? There's no benefits." And that stuck in my mind. And so after, as Claire said, I undertook chartership in 1998 when I was working at King's College London as a senior library assistant. At the time, there were other colleagues of mine sort of within the library services team that were undertaking chartership. So we supported each other. There was not a CILIP mentor, but sort of an internal mentor who had undertaken chartership, who gave us sort of her experience and sort of mentored us with the process. And I found the chartership process really, really good to undertake. A lot of what Sophie has said, sort of, you know, it was sort of trying to write and sort of reflect, which can be sometimes quite hard. After 10 years, I chose to revalidate. I'd read about revalidation and thought that that was time for me to really sort of reflect upon my career and where I was heading for in the near future. And I've revalidated annually since 2008. I find it helps me reflect a lot on my CPD. I've been involved with other special interest groups of CILIP. So I've got experience there of sort of networking and also chairing committees, which I found has helped me reflect as well. And I became a mentor, CILIP mentor in 2009 after undertaking training, and have mentored 3 candidates so far. Again, I found that a good experience looking at it from the mentor side rather than a mentee. Next slide, please, Paul. Thank you. Benefits of professional registration, obviously Claire outlined advantages earlier. I would say for me, it's helped reflective practice. It's given me a chance to reflect on gaps in my skills and areas for improvement. And related to what Claire was saying earlier about it helps with appraisals at work. I certainly find sort of doing revalidation does help me reflect on what skills I need to enhance and sort of further, and also gain new skills at work as well. Career development, again, I find, or I have found, it shows commitment to your employer and your colleagues. I've certainly encouraging some of the colleagues I work with to undertake chartership. I feel, you know, I've been sharing my experience with them. Again, as Claire mentioned about increasing earnings, gaining professional registration and the advantage to your career. I certainly found that when I was applying for jobs after I left university, after doing my undergraduate degree, a lot of them were asking for chartered librarians. So in a sense, obviously I felt that, you know, that is what I need, where I needed to do, what I needed to do in order to further my development as well. Next slide, please, Paul. The challenges of professional registration. Again, I echo what Sophie says. It isn't on the slide, but I echo what Sophie says about reflective writing. I think initially when I was undertaking chartership, and also sometimes with revalidation, it's sometimes hard to reflect And I echo what she says about keeping record of your training and thoughts about what you've attended and sort of ideas and sort of, you know, things to consider for the future. But I found when I was undertaking chartership about time management, I mean, obviously working full time, I was trying to sort of juggle work and also undertaking the submission as well. Luckily, as I mentioned earlier, I had a good support team and obviously a mentor who was an internal mentor who had been through the experience. So they were able to share their experience. But yeah, time management, you sometimes think to yourself, like what Sophie said about procrastinating, you sometimes think, oh, you know, I'm setting myself a goal of a year to undertake this and submit it, and then you sort of get, time goes and you're thinking, oh crumbs, I'm not where I am in my schedule. With revalidation, I obviously try to keep a record of everything through the year, and then when it's getting near time for me to think about revalidation, I sort of am submitting, I set aside time in my calendar and sort of set aside time to sort of obviously write the submission, to sort of proofread it, to go over it, to sort of amend it. And also in the past, sort of, you know, it's like adding things in at the last minute. So it is a case of, yeah, just setting aside time and making sure that you potentially can stick to deadlines. And my last slide, Paul, please, thank you. My top tips to consider. Again, I would say think outside the box and don't get tunnel vision when going through the process. Obviously, you have to think about the wider professional sector. So for me, it wasn't just, you know, I've never really just focused on academic libraries and what's going on in my sector. I tried, you know, obviously try to keep up to date with what is going on in, say, public library sector, health library sectors, sort of, so that, you know, I know what developments are going on, and there are things that, you know, could impact on my sector from outside. Make use of the resources that CILIP have, physical and virtual, again, with the courses that Sophie mentioned, and also that Claire has mentioned about the Shut Up and Write. I would recommend that as well. I found them very helpful. And for me, my last tip is talk to some of your fellow colleagues and contacts who you've networked with, who are going through or have gone through the process, to find out their experiences. They, you know, you may be able to spur each other on and sort of give each other motivation as well. I certainly found that useful when I was doing chartership and revalidation. I have someone who I'm in contact with who we tend to submit around the same time, and it's sort of checking up on each other and saying, how are you getting on? How are you finding things? So yeah, that's all from me. I hope I've helped talk about revalidation. Thanks very much.
Brilliant, thank you, Vicky. Jill is our next panelist to talk. Jill Young has worked in the academic, health and public library sectors. She is currently employed as a Knowledge and Library Services Development Manager for NHS England as part of a national team providing strategic leadership and vision to enable all NHS staff and learners to benefit equally from high quality knowledge and library services. She is a CILIP Fellow and an associate member of the CIPD. Jill is a professional support officer, a professional registration support officer, and was the first winner of the CILIP Mentor of the Year award. She is a co-author of Practical Tips for Developing Your Staff and is one of the editors and authors of the award-winning Introduction to Healthcare Knowledge and Library Services that was published this year. Now I hand you over to Jill.
Hi Claire, thanks for that. So, as Claire said, I'm Jill Young, and I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because I don't think I've particularly got anything revolutionary to say, but it is echoing what everyone else has just said. So, in terms of my professional registration journey, I actually did chartership right at the start of my career. It was a slightly different system then, and employers could actually register a route with SILP for their staff to do chartership. And one of my first professional posts was at Manchester Metropolitan University, and they were registered in that particular way. So whenever they took on what they call new professionals, and they took on quite a few each year, we were expected to enrol in chartership, and you couldn't progress to the next pay level until you'd actually got your chartership. So, and for me, it was a really good way of doing it because you started at, as a very new professional, and it gave you that year to sort of reflect, see what you were learning, and actually look back at the end of that first year and see how far you'd come. And also you were doing it with other people because there were other people in the organisation who were doing a similar thing. So that was really valuable experience. When the mentoring scheme started a few years later, I applied to become a mentor, did the training, etc. And I found that really, really great experience. It's really lovely working with people doing chartership, certification, fellowship. They always sort of make me feel more enthusiastic about the profession, especially if you're just feeling a bit cynical because you've been doing stuff for a long time and then you meet someone who's really enthusiastic getting on with this. So I just find mentoring absolutely a joyous thing to do, and I think I actually get more out of it than the mentees, so I really would recommend that to people. As Claire said, I've worked in various sectors, but when I came to work in health, professional registration is really valued within that, particularly within the teams I've worked in, so that was a real motivation to do my fellowship, and I had a mentor for that. And when I'd achieved my fellowship, I then became a mentor support officer. And these were sort of, before we had professional registration support officers, all the regions had a mentor support officer and a candidate support officer, and they've merged together to become professional registration support officers. And I've carried on doing the mentoring at the same time. So a bit of a whistle-stop tour through that, but again, happy to answer any questions. So in terms of the tips that I'd give, I would say read and read and read and continually refer back to the relevant handbook, especially the information about the 3 criteria. I have worked occasionally with people who haven't achieved their professional registration first time round, and it's never been that they haven't been great at the jobs. It's never been that they haven't been fantastic professionals. It's just when they've submitted the portfolio, it hasn't been clear how they've met the criteria. So I'd really recommend going back to the criteria. Whenever you write an evidence piece, read the criteria before you start writing. When you've written it, read the criteria again, just to double check that you've ticked off all the points in that. I think getting support's really important. So having a mentor is great, but I have, particularly for fellowship, I've worked with buddy groups for peer support and for group writing sessions. So I've done a couple of groups where people wanted a mentor, but as some people have expressed, they were struggling to get them. So rather than being sort of a one-to-one mentor, we formed a group and we got together once a month and we had writing sessions, and we also almost ran them like action learning sets so that people were learning from each other and supporting each other. And that was a really valuable way, I think, of working towards professional registration and expanded individual networks. And I think people really enjoyed it. And there is an article, I think, on the Northwest blog about working in that way. And then finally, with revalidation, I would say the easiest way to do that is to attend the Revalidate in the morning sessions, which we run as PRSOs. We get lots of people coming on them, and most do revalidate either in the morning or within a couple of hours of finishing the session. We usually sort of set a bit of homework in advance to get people to prepare 1 or 2 things and then bring them together. And it's just a couple of short sessions talking out what people are doing, but most of the morning is actually spent in giving you time to actually pull that revalidation together. So I'd really recommend those if revalidation is something you're interested in. And I should have said before that I have regularly revalidated myself as I've gone through the process. And that's it, I think, for the moment.
Great, thank you, Jill. Our fourth speaker on the panel today is Victoria. Victoria has worked in library and knowledge management roles in the NHS for 20 years. She's currently employed as a Senior Associate of Insight and Impact at NHS Horizons, supporting large-scale change in healthcare and beyond. Victoria is a chartered CILIP member and a professional registration support officer for CILIP Northwest. Outside of work, Victoria enjoys reading, family time, and walks with the dogs by the sea. That sounds lovely. Victoria, over to you.
Thank you, and hi everybody. Some amazing tips so far. I was noting down a lot of them myself, so thanks everybody. So yeah, I'm Victoria. I've been a professional registration support officer since 2018 and work really closely with Jill. So a lot of my top tips come to later. I've been inspired by Jill, I think. So thanks to you, Jill. And I've worked in the NHS in various roles in libraries and knowledge management for 20 years this year. So throughout that, professional registration has been a golden thread, I think, throughout everything that I've done since the early days of my career. And I've definitely through that time seen a direct correlation to my career progression. So when I was working towards chartership early on, that definitely helped me to grow in confidence around my professional practice and resulted in me applying, I think, for roles that accelerated that development even further. Without professional registration, I don't think I would have stayed as connected to the profession, certainly to other sectors, because if you've only ever worked in health, it's really easy to lose touch, I think, with what else is going on in other sectors that you're not part of. So that's certainly been a benefit to me. However, I would say, thinking realistically and looking back at my progress, it's definitely been a bit of a stop-start for me around professional registration, and some of that's been due to what's been going on in my personal life when I've taken time away from work for maternity breaks, but then also having difficult periods professionally where my team was at risk of redundancy. So then you kind of feel like you're not really wanting to engage with some of the development side of your job. But despite that, it's been certainly the benefits have outweighed the negatives. And for me, revalidation has been that opportunity to have a professional pause regularly throughout my career, just reminding me to check in and to understand my development and where that's at. So I've chartered, I've registered for fellowship, and I have a buddy group and I have support to do it. I'm not quite there yet, but I hope to be soon. I can certainly see that having a reflective mindset that all of those activities have cultivated in me still helps me every day in my career, in my job. So I can identify now where I've had a learning moment at work, where something hasn't worked, but that's okay because I can try something else. So really getting me into the space of that reflective mindset has been a continual help throughout my career. And in a knowledge role especially, it's great to be able to practice that reflexivity. My role as professional registration support officer, I've been doing that since 2018, and that's just been great in keeping me connected to the profession. And actually I'm finding that I'm better at supporting other people to do this sometimes than doing it myself. So that's always fun. I think my top tips echo a lot of what's already been said. Not doing it alone is a really big one, and I think everybody else has said that so far. So finding buddies, a buddy group for mutual support. It might even be someone that is, you're working with that isn't working towards professional registration, just a friend. Just somebody who will help you to stay accountable, be a sounding board, and actually make it more fun for you. Through fellowship, I actually have a buddy group, and we're being mentored as a group, so we have the same mentor, so that helps to for us to think together. It also then has created a sort of mini professional support network as well, so that spills over into our day jobs and our work roles, and the people in that group are outside my sector in public libraries, academic libraries. So that's been really helpful for me. I think if any of you are listening and thinking, you know, professional registration has been a bit of a stop-start for you, or a bit of an ebb and flow, my second tip is just to not be disheartened by that, and to view your professional registration journey as an exploration of your knowledge and skills, rather than something that you will succeed at or fail at, because you know, real life is happening at the same time. And finally, third tip, to attend the sessions run by Jill and myself and other professional registration support officer colleagues, and you can come as many times as you like. So you might do getting started and then realise a year later you haven't got started. Come back again and check in again, and just stay connected, because it's really, really motivating. That's it from me. Back to you, Claire.
Great, thank you, Victoria. Thank you to everybody for sharing your journeys and top tips with us. I'm going to hand back to Paul now to hand over to the question.
Yeah, I'd absolutely second that. There's been some really useful tips for myself going through chartership at the moment, and all different stages from our PRSOs and Vicky for revalidating as well. So we have about 10-15 minutes for some questions now. So please feel free to add things to the chat. Feel free to put your hand up, virtually or otherwise, and we'll go over to their expertise. Hilary.
Hi, thanks so much. This is really helpful. I echo what Lindsay said in the chat about it being her second or third getting started. My question is about the PKSB. So I'm a year now in NHS library management, and previous to that, the sector I worked most in was in schools, so high school libraries. And I did start chartership back then, but I've got really good support through the email with the support officer around what I should do for that section of my experience. But I suppose my question is, should I have already done my PKSB at the start of this year and now be reflecting on how I've developed since then, because it's been probably the steepest curve of my career in terms of development? Or do I start and look at my PKSB where I am at now? I'm sorry if that's a really simple question, but it's the bit that I find the most difficult, is that sort of evaluation piece, and when I should have done it, or have I missed the boat? Yeah, that's me.
Anyone?
Shall I start and then other people chip in?
Thanks, Jill.
Hi, Hilary. Yeah,
hi.
We do get asked this a lot, so don't worry about it being a simple question, because it's a good one. What I would say, we say to people when you start your professional registration journey that's one of the first things you do, is fill in your PKSB and then carry on with everything. If, however, in your particular case, you've sort of started the registration, but in effect just not got round to filling in the PKSB, you can sort of go and do it retrospectively. I'd say it's probably easier to do it at the start, but yeah, you know, you can do it in that way. You just have to make sure that you've done it twice, in effect, at the start of the process and at the end of the process.
Yes.
So if you can show progression, and actually if you think that would be a useful way of doing it for you, in that you can fill it in as where you were at the start of this, and now you can actually look how far you've come and reflect back, that's fine, because it's your professional registration. You know, as long as you can hit everything that's in the handbook, make it useful for you.
Thanks,
Victoria,
so much.
do you want to add anything to that?
No, Jill's spot on, I think, with that. I think the PKSB, I think, can sometimes be a bit daunting for people, and at the sessions we run, people do sometimes get tied up into not a little bit about it and worry too much about it. But I think using it as a tool that really helps you is a good way to think about it, rather than something, you know, you can either get right or get wrong.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Good advice. Thank you both so much. It's been really helpful.
And just to add to that, it is a practical tool as well. If you fill it in at the start of the process, the chances are when you come to look at it again, you'll have done some of the stuff. You'll have not done some of the other stuff because life will have got in the way, or your job's gone in a different direction, or other things have been becoming more important. And there'll probably be a few things you need to add in because you've actually developed some stuff that you didn't identify at the start, but a project's come up or something's happened. So it's about it being a useful tool to you.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Thank you very much for your question. There's a question in the chat here from Elizabeth about whether it's worth pursuing professional registration with CILIP, even though they don't have a library qualification, just work experience. Are you able to give advice to Elizabeth on that?
I'll go again. From my perspective, absolutely, it is worth it. It's because it's a way of getting your professional qualification. And certainly in health, you know, you'll quite often see jobs, won't you, where they say, you know, needs to be professionally qualified, equivalent to, and your chartership will give you that. Most places will accept that because it is seen as a professional qualification. So I'd absolutely recommend you doing it. I would suggest it's probably really worth working with a mentor in that particular situation, you know, really to understand the handbook and go through everything. But I do know one or two people that have actually done that, and certainly I worked with someone a couple of years ago and mentored them, and they got their professional qualification, and then they've gone on to do professional roles in academic libraries, etc., which they genuinely don't believe they would have done without getting their CILIP chartership. So short answer is yes, slightly longer answer is yes, but go and have a bit of a chat with someone to actually really unpick it for you so you feel confident in approaching it.
Thank you very much.
Claire wants to.
Yeah, I was going to say, can I also add into that the professional registration awards are externally accredited by the Scottish Qualifications Authority, and they give us the accreditation and equivalent rating for academic courses as well. So chartership and KM chartership have been rated for up to 30 SQF level 9 credit points. So there is a link there between chartership and other qualifications. So there are equivalencies noted there. I'm going to put a link into the chat, which will give you a little bit more detail on this so that you can have a look through that at your leisure as well.
Thank you, Claire. There's been a question about finding a list of mentors, which kind of you've put the link into the chat there, Claire. But I know, Sophie, you had mentioned that you had some trouble finding a mentor initially. Have you got any tips on helping people make that first connection?
Can I almost throw this out as a question of my own? So the list is there and it's really great. Would there be, so I have spoke to other kind of colleagues undertaking chartership. Is there any way that a mentor could be assigned to a mentee rather than the other way round? Because as I say, in the end, it was my manager that actually introduced me to someone who was a mentor who has been fantastic. But I don't think I would have got a mentor on my own without having emailed lots and lots of people.
There isn't a way to do it the other way around, unfortunately. I am sorry. Mentors are highly in demand, and a lot of people are not appearing on that list that you can see because they are only available mentors. There's a lot of mentors that have got 3 people regularly that they're mentoring. So I know it is a challenge, and it's one of the reasons that we have the extra support, the webinars, and the professional registration support officers. But I wonder if I could refer through to other members of the panel that are CILIP mentors. Is there any are there any tips in terms of when somebody writes to you, what you're wanting to know about them, and what you're wanting them to be telling you?
Oh, I was going to say, I know when I've had people contact me, they usually tell me who they are, what their background is, and sort of where they are, sort of, in the stage of, chartership, whether they're sort of just beginning, or whether they've gone down, they're a bit further down the line. It's helpful, I find it's helpful to know their background, especially if it's not the same sector as I'm in, so that obviously I get to find out a bit about their background and sort of what sector they're in, and think, oh, this is the challenges that they're facing in their work, sort of, and in the profession. So I know. And also I've had experience with mentees that I've had that have started off really enthusiastic, and then that sort of, unfortunately, because of other commitments, family commitments, personal commitments, outside commitments, they've had to stop. And it's been, for me, it's been, they've been good up until that point, but obviously things happen in life.
Well, PRSOs have any kind of thoughts or tips that might help people obtain mentors?
Jill, I can see you're poised to speak, but I think it's a question we're asked a lot, and I think the main thing, or one of the main things we advise people is to not let that stop you making a start. There's still things you can do towards your submission, towards your planning, towards your reflection, without having identified a mentor. So don't let that be a reason to give up completely, or stall you. Jill, would you add to that?
I'd absolutely echo that. You can contact the Professional Registration Support Office if you're really struggling, because we can answer questions as well on the process, and there is the forums on once you're registered where you can put questions in, and they can be really useful for people. It is about doing an individual approach, I think, to mentors, which can be slightly more time consuming, but the thing is, if you get something that you can see as a blanket email to quite a few mentors, it's very easy to think, oh, well, someone else will pick that up, or someone else will deal with that. I mean, I think personally, most people, if they've got spaces, will tend to say yes, or at least have a conversation with you. So, but it probably is, unfortunately, just because of we've not got quite enough, it's about perseverance. And if someone can't do it, trying somebody else, and recognising it's about their time constraints, nothing to do with you as an individual.
Thank you. Sophie, in our last few seconds. Oh, you're unmuted, Sophie.
Sorry, one last question, or just one last thought. Where everyone's mentioned about buddying, is there any way that we could so we used to have like a meetup in London or wherever your area is, where we could meet all the other chartership candidates, so we could network. I don't know if anything like that could be kind of put out there, because it would be lovely to network with others in the same area that are doing chartership.
Perhaps something that we can propose out to the regional networks. I think it would probably be most valuable for the regional networks to take that forward, just in terms of geography.
Thank
I think the
you.
regional networks can take it forward, but I was just going to say you can take it forward as an individual. You know, I've known, again, people, and certainly some of this was pre-COVID, but I've certainly had candidates who've put calls out on emails and said, right, I live in Liverpool, I'm going to be in this pub on Thursday night at such and such. If you're doing chartership, would any of you fancy joining me? And they have, and they kept going for a group for a little while, but then that individual used it as a piece of evidence for her wider professional networking and stuff. So it's, you know, there's nothing to stop you just putting something out there, saying what you're doing, saying where you could meet and seeing what you can get, and it might provide you with a piece of evidence as well. So it's win-win all the way round.
Thank you.
Certainly sounds like a valid and really important tip there. I've certainly benefited myself from the SILIPS and SILIPS West meetups and things like that, so they are a good idea, yes. So virtual round of applause. Thank you for our panel for giving their time and expertise. It's been really, really valuable. Just finally, before we go, we've got one event coming tomorrow, which I'm just going to quickly show you about. So tomorrow, hot on the heels of this event, is our final event of the year. It's the Bishop and Lefanu Memorial Lecture, where Maria Grant is going to talk to us about writing for purpose, which I guess is quite nicely related to this session here. So hopefully we'll see you there tomorrow. You can register via the SILIPS event website. Thank you for coming, and good luck with your different portfolios and professional registration, everyone.